Welcome to Parenting Team Podcasts. For this episode, I'm really pleased to say I've got the lovely Cassie Swift with me. Cassie's a family empowerment guide and the founder of True You, the children's life coaching business. She's been trained in a number of holistic therapies and has specialisms in eating disorders, self-harm, confidence, resilience, positive mindset, and grief recovery. She's a #1 international best-selling author for one of the 8 collaborative books that she's been a part of, 3 of which of these she organised and published herself. And as well as all this, she's the creator of the Children's Mental Health Matters Summit, something I've been really proud to have been a part of this year so far. Cassie's come here today to talk with me about self-harm. It's a very emotive subject, so please be aware there are things in here that people may find triggering. But the discussion I feel is really important, as self-harm is something that continues to grow in awareness across all of our lives. And if you're a parent or you know someone who's struggling with self-harm, I really hope this video today will help you to help them. Today I've got Cassie Swift with me, who has very kindly come on to talk about self-harm as one of the areas that Cassie does work with. But before we get any further, Cassie, would you like to introduce yourselves to everybody, a bit about you and a bit about your business?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me today. So, my name is Cassie Swift. Obviously, I am a single mum to 3 amazing children who are now 9, 12, and 14, soon to be 13 and 15. Don't know how that has happened. Really scary. I have 6 fur babies. I have 5 cats and a Cavapoo Sophie. I'm sure they will. I hope they don't, but I'm sure they'll make an appearance at some point within the recording. I love reading. I love writing. We enjoy going outside. We had our first camping trip this year, which was amazing. It's something we're going to be doing more of now. And yeah, I just love helping people, and yeah, that's it really.
Well, it's got you do a lot of it, so it's a good job you enjoy it. So definitely, a lot of time goes over there. You undersell yourself as well, to be fair, Cassie. It's a long list that I gave to start with, but that's cool, that's fine. But as I said, I've asked you to come on today to talk about self-harm. It's becoming more and more prevalent as time goes on. I see it in the work that I do with teenagers. Obviously, it's something now you've got a specialism in. How do you, in terms of your world, how do you see and describe self-harm, I guess, for those people who haven't had it touch their worlds yet? Could you just give a bit of an overview?
Yeah, so self-harm is the definition of it is any behavior that is meant to intentionally hurt oneself. So it comes in a range of things. Some you'll think are quite obvious to people, and some are more, you wouldn't necessarily class it as a self-harming behavior, but there is a very, very wide range. But it's anything, and it has different names as well. It can be referred to as NSSI, which is non-suicidal self-injury, or just self-injury, self-mutilation. Those are all things that are used to describe self-harm as well.
So you've intrigued me. I instantly like, oh, really? So when you mention about like the definitions of things that are, or some things that people wouldn't consider, have you got a couple of examples of where it's, in my world, especially the bits people wouldn't associate as self-harm? Because I think that's where people can get kind of tied up, confused. Someone will say, oh, that's self-harm, and then panic sets in. What are, some of those things that fit into the self-harm category?
So you have some that can seem more obvious, so like cutting and burning. Those are sort of the initial things that people can think of. But also pulling hair, like, so that can be one. Sometimes people will scratch in one spot repeatedly until it becomes quite sore, or they will pinch their skin, so it doesn't leave a very necessarily a clear, it's not a clear sign that someone is doing it, but it's causing them discomfort, so it's still classed under that. And then there are things like, the eating disorders, which is a whole other area that I have a specialism in, that that there are many things that fall under that umbrella, but also things like alcohol, drugs, unsafe sex, putting yourself in positions that could be risky. So knowing going out after dark might be not safe, but still doing it anyway because you don't care what will happen to you in that situation. So any sort of risky type behavior, you know, things like running across the road when it's not quite safe, and anything like that that can be deemed, can be classified as a self-harming behavior.
Wow, yeah, which does make it quite a massively broad field
Yes.
of potential. Like you say, we categorically jump to the people who are cutting themselves or burning themselves, seems to be the next step with heat, and things there. Whereas, yeah, and when you put that wider frame on it makes it a little bit more scary because there's more opportunities and places. But I guess it puts it in a context. The minute you put alcohol, like, and things like that in there, it's like, wow, yeah, actually, because you don't see it, you
No.
don't make the association necessarily. Whereas actually, yeah, the principle is still the same thing, of the outcome of what happens from it is to get rid of some discomfort.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the bit that quickly gets missed with self-harm. So that's a very nice, concise little definition way of putting that. I like that. But as with everything, especially when it's new and the world starts to get used to what these things are and what they mean, I know I'm aware, especially as a teen counsellor, there are a lot of myths out there. There's a lot of huge misconceptions and understanding about self-harm. It in itself is a word that you have to, let people know you're going to talk about it before you say it. There is a huge amount of emotion around it, but also a lot of misinformation, I guess. Is
Yeah.
there any, for parents who will be listening to this, I guess, is there any common ones that you hear of that's like, actually, do you know what, this isn't the case, or this is where you need to just consider this is the truth, this is what gets said a lot, and it's not that at all? Is there
Yeah.
any you're aware of?
There's loads. So it's trying to think of some so as I don't go on for too long, really. But one of the most common ones is like, it's a trend. Their friends are doing it, that's why they're doing it. Now that in and of itself, someone may do that. Okay, like they may think, okay, that's what my friends are doing, they'll do it. If they do it more than once, it isn't a trend, because self-harming hurts. You know, surprisingly, shock horror,
Seems obvious,
it
but
hurts. So
yeah,
unless unless there is something else psychologically going on, if you do it once as part of a trend and you're mentally stable and dealing with things, you're not going to repeat it because it hurts. If you are repeating it, there's something more serious going on. If they do it once and think, oh, that helped, then you enter into a whole new world, because another thing people say is, oh, they'll grow out of it, they'll stop doing it. And so it's a cycle. It's very much like an addiction, and I use a cycle that I have. And you have the underlying emotional things that are going on, and what happens is you get the emotional overwhelm, then panic will set in, and then at that point, that's when the self-harm happens, because that gives you a temporary relief of everything that's going on. And people do it for a variety of reasons, which if you want to know, I can tell you in a bit. But then after that temporary relief, you get the feelings of guilt and shame and everything else, which then feeds straight back into the underlying emotional thing. And then you go round again and again. So once you get into it, you can't just stop. And like alcohol and drugs, your tolerance increases. So the severity, I don't like using that word really, but the severity or the methods used will change, because like with an alcoholic, they might only need a can of lager to reach that point of, oh, I feel better now. If they drink a can of lager every night, soon it's going to become 4, soon it's going to become 6. And it's a very similar thing with it. The more times you go round, the more the behavior will change in relation to that. So you can't just grow out of it once you start, because something else takes over. It's a different brain function, it's a different voice that you hear, it's a different mindset. It's not just a case of this is what I'm doing, because it's not normally planned. It is normally when the adrenaline goes and the prefrontal cortex flips and you go into fight, flight, freeze or fawn, and you just go, right, okay, I need to do this because this helps. And yeah, that's, you know, that's what happens, whether it be actual self-injury or binging or whatever that may look like. That it's at that point that the behavior happens. So it's really important not to think that your young person will just grow out of it, because it's a lot more complicated than that. That's what we can hope, we can hope and pray, but the reality is that it's unlikely to happen. And I think another one that is often given is that it's attention seeking, and I don't like that phrase at all. As I previously said, self-harm hurts. So unless there is a real deep psychological issue going on, someone isn't going to do it. Now, when someone doesn't want help, they will likely do it in areas you cannot see. So it will be tops of arms, abdomen, tops of legs, that sort of places that are easily hidden. If you start seeing it in somewhere that is quite visible and noticeable, it's likely that the young person is shouting for help, but they can't verbalize it. So by doing it somewhere where someone sees it, if you see it and then go, well, they're doing it for, they're attention seeking, they're actually asking for help, because you can't verbalize it. When you're in that space and you don't want to do it anymore, but you don't know how to get out, the easiest thing to do is do it where someone will notice, because then they will approach the conversation and they will do it. And then that's your way in. So you're not betraying the voice that's telling you to do it, because you're answering someone's question. So you're not.
You didn't tell. You didn't break it. Someone else noticed, and that's not my fault.
Yeah. So it's and that's the difference between attention seeking and asking for help. There is a big difference in that.
I think that how you articulate yes, they do it somewhere obvious so that somebody can help them, not so that someone can feel sorry for them. In fact, if you feel sorry for them, from what I've experienced in this, they actually really don't particularly like that, because they don't want the attention. They don't want people to talk about the self-harm. They don't want in summer, it can be really uncomfortable if their scars don't tan and everybody can see it. Like, they're really self-conscious and they're not walking around going, "Way, look at it, like this is like a badge of honor." They're the only time they're ever able to look at the scars like that is when they're in a different place. When they feel safe again. So that seeing it as actually, if you see these, if your child makes it visible to you, that means they're opening up. That's a different perspective completely on self-harm than what you'd usually get from it, wouldn't it? Because usually it's panic. And I'm going to ask this, and it's off cuff. I haven't preempted this, so we'll keep it and we'll take it out. Who knows, Cassie? But one of the myths that I hear an awful lot from parents is their instant reaction that if somebody's self-harming, that's literally a road to, in 2 months' time, they're going to commit suicide. Right, How do you? So I've got my views, but I want yours.
No, it's okay. So people that self-harm, there is an increased risk that they could potentially end their life. But it is not an indicator that is what they are going to do, because it's whereas some people, when they get stressed, they may go for a walk, or they may do a meditation, or they may do something to try and ground themselves and feel. It is their means of feeling relief when they actually can't do anything else. So it doesn't mean, if you find out that someone is self-harming, it does not mean that they are going to, it's highly unlikely that they're going to end their life. If they have done it in a place where you can see it, and they have come to you and said, look, I am doing this, it means that they do want help before it gets to that point. And when someone wants help, it becomes a little bit easier to work with it. Because if someone is self-harming and you don't know and it's secretive, if they wanted to end their life, they would. Because you think everything's fine because you can't see anything going on. So if they wanted to, that would be their, how do you say, that would be their sort of window of doing that.
Yeah, they would do that.
Once you know that someone else knows you self-harm, you know that they think you're going to kill yourself. You know that, because that is a sort of, as you said, that's a given. It's like self-harm, suicide, when they're not actually intrinsically linked, but you know that they're going to watch you more. You know that they're going to be keeping an eye on you. You know that they're going to question where you're going, who you're going with, where you're going to be, what time you're going to be back. You know that when you open that door. So it's going to become a heck of a lot more difficult to end your life
in that path.
So it is normally that I can see where this is going and I don't want to go there and I need help. And so it's almost trying to reframe it, if you can, into a positive, that they've reached out to you, rather than just going out and you not seeing them again. So, and it's really hard, because how can you reframe your young person self-harming as a positive? You know, that's like, it sounds mental, I know it does, but if they'd kept it from you for X amount of months, years, you don't know what they could have gone on to do. So by doing that, it has opened that window for you to actually start helping and finding a way of dealing with it before it gets to that point.
Absolutely. Good. That's firmly where I sit in that. I think it's the context for parents that self-harm is actually a coping mechanism for those feelings, those things that are going on, that overwhelm. It's a way to control that for the individual. That's what self-harm is. The same as alcohol. But because you don't see what's happening to your liver when you drown 6 cans of Strongbow or whatever it is nowadays, some shot out there, I'm sure, instead of Strongbow, don't even touch the stuff, never mind. It seems less concerning, less emotional. It's kind of, and because that was a generational thing, I think, as well. Like, a lot of people I knew drink. My parents drank, it's part of life. Whereas I think the difference with self-harm, that actually has been going on for years, but we seem to like to be oblivious to that. I think being able to draw that reality check of what it is, and like you say, if you don't find the positive on it as a parent, you are going to disappear down a very dark alleyway of what this could mean, what if, and that's going to make it very difficult for you to support your young person who's now put themselves in a position where they know guilt is something they're going to come across every time they do this, even though it's the only way they know how to help themselves. By telling you, they know they've just made their job harder, but they did that on purpose, so that you could help them. Wow, what a strong person you've got there! Like, you've brought up that's amazing. But
and what a lot of parents, what is, that, and the young person will also know, because, as you said, they're often people pleasers, they're often empaths, they're often, they will know that you will blame yourself as a parent, and they don't want you to do that, because it is nothing that you, in most circumstances, it is nothing that you have or haven't done. It is, dare I say it, what children and teens are exposed to in society and the world that they are living with, that they feel so trapped that they don't know what else to do. It is not a reflection of how you have parented in most circumstances. It is not a reflection, and they don't want you starting to beat yourself up. And I say this with the most love that I can. If your young person does come to them, please don't deflect it to you of, this is my fault, I should have done more, I should have noticed. If you need to do that, find a friend or someone else that you can do that to. Please don't do it to your young person, because they already feel bad enough
Yeah.
without you blaming yourself.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, appreciate the reason they've taken longer to get to you in that kind of sense, because obviously there's the whole bit before they got to the self-harm, and they've been dealing with that on their own, trying to be independent, trying to fix things themselves, trying to make you proud as a parent, and actually they've got to the point where they're stuck.
yeah,
They're stuck, and yeah, and I just, that relationship piece with parents and young people is everything in this world. And I just, parents who've got a good relationship and get to know this stuff about their teenagers, pat yourself on the back
yeah,
that your teenager or your young person is there telling you
yeah,
whatever way they're telling you, because they didn't have to, like you say. There's
yeah,
no rule that says they had to tell you what was going on. They could be telling their mate next door
yeah,
and you know nothing, and that's a scarier place to be. And I look at this stuff quite a lot, obviously, and you know that there was the NHS study that came out recently of like 24% of 17-year-olds say, yeah, I've self-harmed. Yeah, at some point in my life, I've self-harmed. And you kind of think, well, that's the ones who are in the study. Like,
yeah,
that's not even a fair representation. There's billions out there who are like, I'm not doing the NHS study, so I might find out the truth. Right? That's a legit response for a 17-year-old. And even of those who said yes, 24% of them
yeah.
said yes. And it's like, that's a huge number of people who look at this as an answer for them for how to feel better
Yeah.
in some sort of control
and,
element. So
and it's because as well society are so going back to like drugs and alcohol, it's like, yeah, they're a given, they're what people do, it's accepted in a society.
yeah,
And you know, it's becoming that, it's becoming, yeah, well, people self-harm, you know.
yeah,
And it can, you know, it can go wrong sometimes when someone, if someone is so desperate, like going back to when you were saying about suicide, and this isn't to scare people, but if people are so desperate, sometimes they will self-harm and they'll do it in the wrong place, and then the consequences aren't what they expected. So if your young person is and I'm not sure if you're going to ask me about this, but if your young person does come to you, there are steps that you can take, because you can't stop it overnight. It's it as much as you want to, you can't, and you're going to have to work in a process. And there are certain steps that I advise doing to help you and your child, you know, with that process, because it won't just stop.
no. Well, it's like, and if you keep in your head, ask an alcoholic to stop overnight. That's logically what you're asking. So be realistic, or else you're going to end up in a fight. To be paid, it's
And
never going to end
no.
pleasantly, is it?
And
So
what you really want to do is, when a young person, you need to keep that connection, you more than anything else, you know, as you touched on, you know, having that connection is key. One, if you have got that, you can work through it. If you start fighting, you're going into a hole, because you're the one person they trusted, and if they can't trust you anymore, they literally have nothing, you know. They literally feel helpless and powerless, and like, well, what else can I do, because that was the only person who could have helped me.
yeah,
So although it's difficult, please, you know, that's why as a parent you will need support yourself to deal with it, so as you can come at it fresh every time with your young person and not end up at loggerheads. Because obviously we want to just stop, we want to take anything away that they're going to hurt themselves with, we want to, you know, tie them up in their room until they stop. It doesn't
yeah.
work, you know. It can't, it doesn't work like that. um so trying to keep that connection, and if that means you saying, okay, I just need 5 minutes, I just need 5 minutes to process, and then I'll come back to you, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and saying it's not reflection, I'm just dealing with my own stuff, you know, reassuring them that it's not because of them, it's just you trying to process, you know, I'm just processing what's going on so as I can help you, something like that. So as you're reassuring them, and so as their mind doesn't go, oh, it's because of me, they're going to have a breakdown, they're going to do this, they can't cope. It's reassuring them, which,
Yeah.
you know, is key. But I understand it's not easy.
Well, and it's a great role modeling opportunity. We hate it as parent. Well, I do. I speak for the world there all of a sudden as if I should. But personally, I hate it when I feel out of sorts and I know what I should do is this, and yet my entire body's going, oh and actually giving them the opportunity to go, as adults, we do, you know, our teenage kids know we're not perfect. They've worked it out now. Whether you think you are or not, they have clocked every single mistake you've ever made. Over the years, they've chewed it all over, and they're there. So being able to show them how to handle, I'm a bit out of sorts with this. I just need to. That's exactly the issue they're in. They don't know how to deal when they're feeling out of sorts. So take the opportunity that's just been gifted, because you are gonna, like, be honest. There's no way anyone's gonna stand in front of their young person and go, "All right, okay, all over this one. This is gonna be easy. Let's crack on." Like, no, you're not. You're not. You're going to have those horrible thoughts. You're going to want to cry and hug them and, like you say, lock everything up. But on that note, what are the things, like those things that parents should or shouldn't do? Those you've mentioned there, like, don't take on their emotion and make it about yourself for a start. Loving that. It's not about you.
Yeah.
Still not about you yet.
Yeah.
And being aware of your feelings, to take a minute if you need to. Is there things that parents should or shouldn't, I think, is always important to as well?
I think so. Yeah, as I say, it's when you do have those opportunities to roll. So when you, by you saying, okay, I just need a few minutes, they will automatically be going, okay, they're obviously overwhelmed. What I told them is quite big. They're acting quite calm, and they will be watching you. You know, they will be watching you to see, you know, whether you go and crack open a bottle of wine and then pour yourself a large glass of wine, or whether you just say, okay, just need to go outside for a minute. And, you know, so just be aware that they're going to be watching you, because if they see you, and there's nothing wrong with going and opening a bottle of wine, but maybe not immediately after they've told you something, because then what they're seeing is, okay, I'll do alcohol. That helps.
Get a glass at least. Like, put some sort of thought process. Don't be one of them.
Yeah.
Does it that way. Think ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I
yes.
like it.
So just sort of be aware that they are going to be watching how you take this stuff. So just being aware of that. Also, as I said before, people go, right, I need to take away everything. I need to take away the razors, the compasses, the pencil sharpeners, the knives need to be locked up, you know, all of this stuff. And this is where my way of doing stuff varies to a lot of mainstream things, because I don't do that. Because the chances, and they raid their rooms and they might find a box that has got, you know, razors in it, and 9 times out of 10 people that self-harm will use something that's sterilized 9 times out of 10. If you take away everything that they can use that is sterilized, they will use something else. They will find something else, whether it be a tin can that they rip a bit out of, whether it's a glass that they break and use. They will find something. Again, the way that an alcoholic will find something, whether it's even not an alcoholic drink but contains alcohol and that could be dangerous, they will find something. And what happens then is you cannot guarantee that it's sterilized, and then the risk of infection is really high. And the chances are, if you take away everything, going back to the control, you've taken away what they can do. So if they then use something else, they won't tell you, because they don't want to disappoint you, because they already know that by doing that, they've let you down, right? This is the thought process that they have. So they won't come to you. And if it's not sterile, it could get infected. It could turn to sepsis. And then you're in all sorts of bother.
Horrible places.
So, and a lot of people go, so you're telling me to leave them with stuff? Yes, I am. You know, if you're helping, and I know I keep using the alcoholic analogy, it's just because it's more known about, like, people know the steps that are in place when someone is trying to recover from alcoholism. You know, if someone is a recovering alcoholic, they still have access to a couple of cans. It's still there, because it's their safety. And then they're almost less likely to, because that fear and that control and that desperation has gone, because they're like, it's there if I need it. So it's and also again, a lot of people don't understand why, but making sure that you've got a fully equipped first aid kit. So it's got saline in it, it's got burn covers in it, it's got you can buy like the miniature, the butterfly stitch thing,
strip things,
strip
aren't they?
thing.
Yeah.
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 That it's got all of that in it. Why would I do that? Is it because if your young person does it and they don't feel they can come to you at that time, you've taught them, and if you know, again, making them aware that don't do it in certain places where big they 9 times out of 10 they do know.
Yeah.
But showing or telling them how to do it safely and say, look, first aid kit's there. If you can't come to me, it's all in there. If there's something that you can't find in there, you know, leave me a note, send me a message, I'll leave it outside your door. Keeping that communication open, because if you know that they can keep it clean, of course that just cuts down that other whole thing of the sepsis, because if that happens, it's a totally different, you know, ball game.
Together. So it feels like, I don't know, and I'm so glad you came on and said the whole, stop trying to hide everything from your child as if they're a toddler, and take control away from them again, because the counterintuitive side of that instinctively feels right, but categorically will bring the wrong side of effect of it. So there's huge pieces for parents where their heart will tell them one and their head will tell them another of which way to go. So I guess in that sense, are there any tools that you recommend, or any, so you've said about, you know, don't hide it, prepare them, things like that, but are there any things that you find that can make a difference? Because we've had this conversation before. There are things out there that work for some people. I work with anxiety a lot, and when somebody says to a teenager, well, you've just got to breathe, I'm like, you've got to contextualize that differently. You can't tell a teenager to breathe and things will feel better. Yes, they will, you're right, but actually how you do that. For self-harm, there's like, oh, grab ice. It's like middle of school, bad situation, feeling really bad. What, go downstairs? Not, where am I supposed to get the ice from? Not sure that's going to work.
And
So,
touching on that, can I actually go on that? And I talk about this in other places. So there are ideas that people give for helping when someone feels like they're going to self-harm. It could be pinging an elastic band, drawing on themselves, holding ice, all of that sort of stuff. I don't recommend any of that, because what that does is, and everyone's different, but from personal experience and from what I have seen, when you're doing any of those things, you're feeding into the self-harm mindset. So it's still uncomfortable. It's still, you know, not, but what it actually, it doesn't touch what you're used to doing. So what it can do is cause even more frustration in the want to do it. And then you end up doing it, but even worse, because you've had all this anxiety of not quite hitting it where you needed to at first. And so now you then go like full pelt because you've got the frustration of it all. So those sort of things don't tend to work. They may do for some people, but just be aware it's still feeding into the mindset of hurting yourself in some way, which ultimately you need to get away from, because you need to detach. So there are things, sometimes to keep communication open, people will feel like they need to interrogate their young person. Please don't do that, because they don't like it, you know, especially teenagers. You know, even a general conversation, I can talk a lot better with my teens in the car when they're next to me and we're not like that, because it gets rid of that barrier. Text messages are great, you know, even if they are in their room, texting is a great way. Also a notebook. So you can have a notebook that they write in and they leave it in a certain space, and you know that if it's there. And what that allows as well, the same with texting, if you notice that when you talk things are getting a little bit agitated and you're giving a response you don't necessarily want, by having it written either in a text or a book, it gives you that time to pause and think about your response. And also, so I find tapping helps a lot. And it's So a lot of teens can be adverse to doing it at first. So for those of you who don't know it, EFT is emotional freedom technique. It's where you tap on meridian points throughout the body, and they're all, it's all interlinked within you, and it calms your body down. So when you think of the human brain, you've got I often describe it like it's a thinking cap. So if you've got like baseball cap, and it's your prefrontal cortex, and that keeps all the logic going through and all the reasoning and helps you go, okay, that's not too bad, I can deal with that and whatever. When the self-harm or anxiety or whatever kicks in, the prefrontal cortex just goes. It's like the baseball cap's gone now. It's disappeared, and you're left with the adrenaline and the fight, flight, freeze, fall. Don't know what I'm doing. Can't think logically. How am I going to get back in control of anything? And what the tapping does is it sends signals throughout your body to let you know that you're safe. So as you can find your baseball cap and put it back on, and then the prefrontal cortex comes back online and helps you. What ideally what you work towards, so there are a whole range of tapping scripts and tapping techniques that you can use on a long-term basis, but I call it the SOS tapping like protocol, which is what you want to try and aim towards. So when the initial, I'm waffling, I'm trying to get my words.
No, it's cool. It's just interesting, yeah.
So when you realize, or when that impulse to self-harm kicks in, there's a 90-second window in which the adrenaline rises, and the likelihood of you doing something is at the greater risk. If you can get past that 90 seconds, the actual likelihood and risk of self-harming drops significantly, because you can't go up any higher. So if you can find a distraction that works for 90 seconds, you're some of the way there. So with the SOS tapping that I recommend, first of all, it's like if you're in the midst of it and you don't know what to do, just tapping on your collarbones, just literally getting them. And it doesn't matter how hard or soft you tap. Obviously we don't want the self-harm, but if they want to tap really hard, they actually can. And the good thing about that is the harder you tap, the quicker you're gonna come back down anyway.
Oh, wow.
So by doing that, it really helps. If you notice that you're getting anxious, you can go through the tapping points, which you can find anywhere. I do have a PDF if anybody wants it, and whatever of the tapping points, and you can just tap through the points a few times. As I say, teenagers don't really like doing this out and about because it can feel a bit invasive. So if you are out and you get that impulse, you also have very similar points on the tops of your fingers. So just tapping through the tips of your fingers and the side of your hand can also help significantly reduce the thing. And just trying to repeat that does bring the risk down significantly. It does take time to start implementing it, but it's one of the, when someone is starting to be aware, like when you get to so if you think back to the cycle that I said, when you've got the emotional overwhelm and then panic sets in and then you self-harm, if you can start tapping at the emotional overwhelm point where you can feel it, that's your interruption point for the rest of the cycle. And then once you're in a place of calm, I often talk about having a box of hope. They're called other things. There are, self-soothe boxes and things like that. But having a special box that doesn't have to be a posh box, can be a box that you decorate in wallpaper, in wrapping paper, anything for you, and you fill it with stuff that can be used as a distraction. So photos are a good one, like ones that will evoke happy memories, so of family, friends, holidays, pets. I sort of having a playlist of your favorite songs but are more upbeat, not what a lot of teenagers listen to, like some of your favorite songs that you might not want to listen to but make yourself listen to, because again, energetically, it raises your vibration. So you don't have to do anything, but just having it playing will automatically lift the vibration. And And you can put things in like nail varnish, because trying to paint your nails, and again, it comes with time, because so the first time, don't suggest that they paint their nails if they because that isn't going to work. It's a thing that you work towards. So as they might think, oh, I'm getting that impulse, I'm going to go and paint my nails, and you can do that. Things like having a bottle of water to hand can help, because then encouraging them to drink is by drinking from a bottle that you have to tip it up, regulates their breathing, because without that's then not telling them to breathe, because you have to breathe in when you're drinking, and it actually works to help regulate your breathing without going, okay, now breathe.
Breathe out.
Have some water, and then that action will help. Popping candy is a good one if your young person is like sensitive to sensations, whatever, like the popping sensation on your tongue can be quite a good feeling for some people. And then you can have colouring, but keep pens in there, not pencils, because you don't want to have things like pencil sharpeners in there, because obviously if they're going there at a time that they're not
coming out of that circle, you don't want to put them back in it.
If they like candles, essential oils are a great one. And if they like candles, again, nothing that you need lighters with, but you can get little battery operated
LED ones.
Having a shower, and putting like Epsom salts. So Epsom salts is a good one for drawing out negative energies. So either having a bath with them in, or putting them in the bottom. Again, if they're sensitive to feelings and they like the feeling, standing on the Epsom salts when they're having a shower, it will sort of depends how energetically aligned, but it will help to draw out some of the negative energy. Sometimes it's nice to collect letters from people, or have birthday cards in there that have got nice messages in, because then you're reading them and going, oh yeah, actually people do like me. Oh, that's a really lovely message. And having a list in there as well of emergency contacts, like written down. So if their phone battery is gone or something like that, there's a list of, like, obviously your number, but also some crisis numbers, like whether that's Young Minds or Papyrus or places like that, so as they know that there are people that are going to listen. And then basically you fill it with then anything else that brings you joy, whether it's a soft toy, whether it's a blanket that your nan made you when you were a baby, whether it's an ornament that you won at an amusements when you went on holiday, or literally anything that brings up a happy memory, because then by going through that, it's going to take more than 90 seconds.
Absolutely.
And it will also be changing the vibrations, and it will help, and it will hopefully become a place where they can then move on to journaling. I used to journal a lot. It wasn't nice words, but it was still getting it out, and even if they want to like scratch on the page and rip the page, it's still getting that frustration out somewhere. It doesn't have to be a perfectly kept journal. It's literally a place where you can go and just let out some frustration. So all of those sort of things in one place, so that they can go, okay, I'm feeling this, and they've got it in their box, and they can just sort of go through it, and that can help significantly as well. And it's a nice thing for them to do, because it's like everything. That's why I call it the box of hope, because it's like all the good stuff in a little box. So when you open it, it's like just all love comes out of it. Like you can't help but have love come out of it, which automatically will change where you are.
And how you feel
at
that point. And I love the fact that it's all under their control. You can't decide what goes in that box as parents. Like, don't even get on suggesting unless they've got nothing in there, because to be fair, that as they build it again will be something more. And then if, I guess, as a parent myself, I instantly think, oh, I'd love to know what's in my kids' box. I'd love to know what they put in there. Would never go and peek or do anything. But if there was a point where they were like, I want to show you what's in there, I would take such immense pride. I feel really chuffed with that. They've got those things. They've got that awareness of themselves. It's a great moment for them to be able to see that all in one place. And it's such a positive way to deal with something. that is in essence around control, how they feel about themselves, their self-worth,
Yeah.
all of those things. And that one box will, yeah, give them a huge step forward in recognizing just the truth in some of those things they've been thinking for so long, in such a nice, creative kind of way, I
And
guess, which is,
say it's letting them build it. And if they go, well, I've got nothing to put in there, like if your teen is
yeah,
particularly, you know, depressed at that time, then maybe say, okay, do you want to go through some photos, whether they're physical ones or digital ones, and then offer to print them out? Because then as
yeah,
well, if they are in a place where they haven't got anything, you suggesting things, not, and then not telling them, but giving them that option and knowing that you're going to print them out, or, you know, let's get your birthday cards out from last year, or, you know, if you keep
yeah,
them, whatever, or whatever you do, it's, you're showing an interest. So it's like, okay, maybe I'll try and do it for them then to keep them happy, but then you'll find that they'll actually like it. And even if it's only got a couple of photos in to start with, then that's what it's got, and they will add to it, you know.
yeah.
um,
Absolutely. And I love that kind of, you can suggest, as parents, we would love to fix. Oh, we love a fix so much. But just taking that step back of, let's listen to some music and see which ones, and go through some awful songs, they will be, to find those ones that they think, and writing them, and you write that down and make the list. Or like you say, you print the photos and make it easier to do, but give them that initial piece of choice to show, is a great thing to be able to do with people. And I can imagine there's some people like, I can picture girls getting all over this one. And I know this is very probably completely unethical of me to go this way with stuff, but I'd actually say, with, even if there isn't necessarily things in the box, if there's a list of things to do, that it's just that reminder piece. It doesn't, I guess we need to get out of that physical mindset of, well, now Cassie said a box, so it has to be a box and it has to have.
it doesn't, I mean, it can
It's
be
about the joy,
makeup
the
bag,
hope.
it can
Yeah,
be, it's
yeah,
just, it can be anything that you like, you know. You could even go out and buy something, you could make something, you know. It's, you know,
yeah,
and as you say, it doesn't have to be, they're just some suggestions. It could be, okay, I'm feeling like this and I don't want stuff, but maybe I could go for a walk, you know,
yeah,
or whatever. It's just, it's about changing the mindset and
yeah,
doing something different, so that when you then look at the bag, the box, the whatever you've got, the
yeah,
ice cream tub that was left in the cupboard that no one else wanted, whatever it might be,
yeah,
your brain goes, okay, we're doing this, not this. And it
yeah,
makes a new association. So it's
yeah,
just the changing of the mindset, creating new neural pathways, that your brain goes, we're doing this thing, not the default this thing. So we're going
yeah,
to the box of hope, not the box that's got the razor in it. You know,
yeah,
even though they're both there,
yeah.
you
I'm
they
choosing.
have a choice. You know, they still, so don't sort of take one away when they've got the other. It's they
Mm,
still have a choice, and what you want is for them to start looking at that and going, yeah, I choose that one.
yeah,
You know, I don't want that one, but that one's
yeah.
still there just in case,
Yeah.
because if you take that away, then they're going to want that one, you
Well,
know.
this one, but this box of hope becomes irrelevant because now
Yeah,
I need to replace this.
because I want,
Becomes focus
yeah,
point. Yeah, I
yeah.
want what I can't have.
Yeah, whereas if they're both there, it's like,
Mm,
no, I want this one because I know that this made me feel better, or I know that that photo of me with X, Y, and Z putting this face is in that one, and I
yeah,
want to look at that one rather than looking at what's in there. So
yeah,
it's about retraining the brain, which
yeah,
takes time.
yeah.
It
I
takes
think
time.
that's the biggest thing. It's practice. And yes, we are talking about young people proactively practicing, which they do like a quick fix. Long-term gratification isn't a strong point at all whatsoever, but that's not a surprise. And that is, I think, where the parents' relationship comes back in of, that's great, you know, you tried that this time, we'll keep going, keep that emphasis and that motivation going, that this doesn't just get solved in 5 seconds flat, but every step is a great step.
Yeah,
And the easier it gets, the more you continue to go down the road. And their awareness of that, to be able to help the teenager with their awareness of that for expectations point of view,
yeah,
is massive, because it is a, well, I just turned it on. It's like, yeah, well, you can't. As I like the kind of the phrase I like to use a lot with my teenagers is, controlling some of these things is like taking a drink out of a fire hose. Like it will give you what you want, but it's gonna be a journey. And actually, there probably is a way to drink out of a fire hose, but the way you're gonna go at it the first time, you're getting soaked whether
Yeah.
you like it or not. That's
Yeah.
how that's going to go.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of aspect of it that I think parents need to, it's okay that this takes time.
Yeah,
It's,
it is, and
definitely,
it will, and it also, when you start coming out the other side, which you will, it will happen. um the pride that they will have in the journey that they've come through will be immense, because it's not an easy thing to navigate, and there will be setbacks, you know. And if there is a setback, you know, just reassuring them, you know, they might have done really well and chosen the box of hope 95% of the time, and then one day they chose the other box. And don't, you know, just say, okay, it's happened, let's, you know, when you're ready, let's think about what led to that, because you have been choosing this one, what was different this time, and trying to get them to look at it from a, like, above, not in it, like, say, right, look at it like a program and the scene that you were doing. So as they're not in it, they're looking at it, and
yeah,
say, do you notice what was different about this time? And again, don't do it straight away, because they will feel so bad that they've done it and that they've relapsed and everything. But maybe a week or so again, say, okay, when that happened, what went wrong, what not went wrong, don't say that, what what was different this time,
yeah,
what made you choose that one instead of that one. And do it from a curiosity point of view, not a judgment point of view.
yeah,
Because the more they become aware, the more they can tweak things, and they might say, okay, I don't know, I'd had an argument and I didn't even look at the box, you know. And it's
yeah,
like, okay, well then maybe let's put the box of hope on top of that box, so as
yeah,
that's the first thing that you have. And it's just tweaking it and noticing. And, you know, as you say, that there is that instant gratification want for things, and unfortunately there isn't one. There isn't. It does take time, and you need to, again, reassure your young person that it's normal, that they are going to have good and bad times, and that's
yeah,
normal. That's a normal human response. It isn't, you know, once you, it doesn't mean they've failed, because no one's perfect. There's
yeah,
always going to be bumps on the road, and until it's ingrained, like, in their brain, there's always going to be that chance. But it will come to it, whereas even if they have the thought, there will become a time where they know the feeling of doing that is a lot worse than choosing something else. They will
yeah,
know that that has a far greater win than what they've done, because they're at a point where they can see it,
yeah,
they
in
can see it
comparison.
play out, and they can see where this one leads and where this one leads, and they get a more informed choice. But it does take time.
Yeah, it's, and you know, giving it a go, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
So, having taken a lot of your time so far, because with all this interesting stuff, I guess to kind of sum up where we've been at with all the work you've done on this and all the families that you've worked with, the young people and everything, is there one piece of advice or a takeaway that you leave with people that parents might find helpful, or things just to bear in mind when it comes to self-harm, if it is something that touches in families' lives?
Um, I think the first thing is just not to let that panic set in. If it's your initial response to you finding out that will direct where the journey goes. So
Mm,
if you, and I'm not saying that you have to act like really cool and be like, okay, that's fine and whatever. But if you go, oh my God, what are we going to do? I can't cope with this. It's all my fault. They're going to go, okay, not going to tell you again.
yeah,
That's just, you know. Whereas if you do go, okay, I don't quite know how to respond at the moment, I'm processing it, just give me a couple of minutes, we will get through this. And then opening up, saying, okay, I'm going to need you to be more open with me, you know, there are things we can do, but I'm going to need you to stay honest with me in order for me to help you.
yeah,
And I won't, like, ever leave you to deal with it by yourself. And that reassuringness, making up a word now, but that reassurance
yeah,
will then sort of show where it goes. And I think that it is, if you ever feel like things are getting a bit too much, or you're going to react in a way that's not going to be helpful, just taking that pause for yourself and just going, okay, and making sure that you have help because it's not something that you can do on your own. Even, as parents seem to think that we have to do everything by ourselves. That's not how things are meant to be. It takes a village to raise a child didn't just come from nowhere. It has a background, and it does. And it will also, reassure your young person if you say to them, okay, I'm going to talk to so and so because I need to work through this as well. They'll know that you're getting some help. Again, they'll be seeing that you've got help. Even though they've come to you for help, you still need some help. But again, before sort of going out and telling anyone, just having that conversation and saying to them, okay, I'm going to support you in the best way that I can, but it means that I'm going to need to talk to somebody to make sure that I can help you, so as they know and they don't feel like you've gone behind their back and told X, Y, and Z all about what's going on. It's clear communication is key. That's all I can say, is that keeping that open is the biggest thing that you can do for both of you.
Yeah. And literally, I could take that line off you and I could drop it into anxiety. I could drop it into, all these things are kind of, I feel like it's all I ever say, but it's really nice to have it in a context of this particular scenario we're talking about with self-harm, and how all of this can make such a difference, because it's as scary as arse, if I'm honest. The prospect of your kids going down this road, and just to feel as though you've got an element of understanding. We like to feel a bit intellectual about this stuff, so from beginning to end, the information you've shared has been epic, Cassie. Thank you so much. In what will be a gift for some people, I know for definite, in a very uncertain time, in parenting or caring for young people. So whilst I'm bigging you up as well, of like, it's been amazing. If there are others out there feeling very much the same as I do, how do people get hold of you? Where's the best place to find you if they want to come and learn more or work with you with their family? How do we do that?
So I do have a website that you can visit, truechildren'slifecoaching.co.uk. But I am on Facebook a lot. You can visit my personal profile, and that's, you can drop me a DM that way as well, or through the email on my website, and you can contact me with either of those ways, and I'll be happy to have a chat with anybody and have a conversation and try and help however I can. I have got some free resources as well, so if they will help, then you're more than welcome to get those.
Fabulous. Thank you. I will obviously attach all of these links around every post that goes out, for everybody on their social media decides I'm on with stuff. But I'd definitely be going to snaffle up those freebies whilst they're on offer. Quick bank them somewhere, even if you're not sure at the minute with where these things are. But thank you so much for your time, Cassie. I very much appreciate it. Is there anything? So that's it for this episode. Thank you so much if you've listened this far. I really hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. Don't forget to never miss another episode. Please click the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. As always, if you have any feedback or ideas, please do get in touch. I always love to hear from anyone who's been listening to these. You can find me at teentherapistonline.com for my website, or Facebook and Instagram. I'm Teen Therapist Rachel Martin. I will always reply, so please, if you have anything you want to let me know about or ask about, please do just get in touch. And if you're feeling really, really lovely and you're listening on Spotify, you could leave me a review, which would really mean the world to me. Once again, I'd just like to say thanks, and I hope you have a super lovely day.